Hello there, if you are looking for a video on how to connect login and sign up form to a Firebase, search normal. This video is the solution you have been seeking to master Firebase for your web application. In this video, we will be connecting login and sign up form to a Firebase, not only for authenticating users but also to store essential user data like first name, last names. By the time this video comes to an end, we ought to be able to create accounts, store user data into the Firestore, and authenticate users with a Firebase. Log in with a newly created account and see who is logged in, and even have ability to log out of the system. I have provided a GitHub link where you can get 3 files: index.html, style.css, and script.js, which are just the front end of the form we will be using. And if you want to check how I developed the front end, you can check this video. I've pinned it top right corner. I used PHP to implement the backend on that video. Let's kick off by taking a glimpse at our login and register form. These forms are simple, allowing users to transition between them seamlessly with courtesy of JavaScript that toggles form visibility. Throughout the tutorial, I will explain each step, ensuring even a beginner can effortlessly follow along. First thing first, fire up your preferred browser. I will use Chrome, but feel free to choose your own. Search Firebase Authentication and click on firebase.google.com. We are going to click on Go to Console button at top right corner. On the welcome page, select Create a Project and give it a fitting name. I will go with a login form, but feel free to choose your own. I will check to accept the Firebase terms. Click Continue. I will disable Google Analytics because we won't need it in this project. Click Create Project button. We'll wait patiently for it to materialize, just for a few seconds. Click Continue. We will be directed to this page where we can add our web app. There are other options to add different apps. App nickname, I will name it after our project. Click Register App. Opt for Script. You will get the code snippet containing your app's API key and ID. We are going to copy this code snippet. On our index.html, we are going to link a script file of type module so as we can import, and I use source as Firebase auth.js. I will go ahead and create JavaScript file and name it Firebase auth.js. Now paste the copied code snippet into Firebase auth.js. Proceed back to the Firebase console. Click Go to Console. Scroll down to choose Product section. Select Authentication. Get started. There are various authentication methods available, such as Google Sign In. But for this tutorial, we will focus specifically on using email and password authentication. I will proceed to enable the email and password authentication method and save the changes. On left side panel, select Authentication, choose Setting, scroll down to the Authorized Domains section. Here we will add the domain for the live server I am using. I will simply copy the IP address. Click on Add Domain, paste it and remove any unnecessary parts. On left sidebar, click on Project Overview. From there, we will proceed to add another product named Cloud Firestore. Create database. Leave everything as default in this pop-up and proceed by clicking Next. I will keep the checkbox checked for production mode and then proceed to click on Create. Our database has been successfully created. I will proceed to allow both read and write access by changing the setting to True. Although a warning may appear, we'll ignore it for the time being. And that is it. Our database is now ready to go. We will be importing various methods for authentication and accessing Firestore. For authentication, we will import getAuth, create user with email and password, and sign in with email and password methods. Additionally, we will copy the Firebase link from Firebase app.js, but this time it will be Firebase auth.js. So I will modify this part to read Firebase auth.js. We will also import a get Firestore, set doc, and doc methods, then a Firebase Firestore link link, I get it by copying this one, then modifying it to read firestore.js. I will grab the sign up button with the ID submit sign up and add a click event listener to it. When the button is clicked, we will know that the user wants to submit the sign up form. So constant sign up is equals document.get element by ID. Then I will pass that ID here, submit sign up. Sign up dot add event listener. I want to listen on click event, then arrow function that takes event object. Then we have prevent default function. It is used to prevent the default action associated with an event from occurring. Let me check the IDs we have for all the input fields so that I can grab each one and retrieve its input value. So for register form, we have first name and last name, register email, register password. So I will initialize a constant email with the value input from that ID register email. I will initialize the password with the value from ID register password. Then I will initialize first name, document.get element by ID first name dot value. Then a constant last name is equals to document.get element by ID last name dot value. Then initialize constant auth with an instance of Firebase Authentication. Constant auth is equals to get auth. Next, initialize constant DB with Firestore Database object. Constant DB is equals to get Firestore. Create user with email and password. Then we're going to pass auth object and email and password as argument. If the user creation is successful, the promise returned by create user with email and password resolves with a user credential object containing information about the newly created user. You can then access the user property of this credential object to get the detail about the user. So constant user is equals to user credential dot user. I will create a user data object with email, first name and last name variables, which we'll use to store information in Firestore. So constant user data, email, a variable email, first name and last name. So to handle all success or error messages we may encounter, we will display messages for our project within a div element. We will use a JavaScript to populate this div with the information we want to show. In register form, just below the opening tag of the form, I will add a div element with ID sign up message and a class message div. I will set its style to display none to initially hide it. Copy the div element and add it to the sign in form just below the opening tag of the form. This time I will rename the ID to sign in message. Let's define the style for the message div class and the style.css file. So message div, I will give it a background color of shade blue, text color white, padding 10 pixel for top and bottom and 20 pixel for left and right. Margin, give it a 10 pixel, then a border radius of 5 pixel, font size 1 rem, opacity 0, making it transparent, then animation fade out 7 seconds forwards. We will then create a single function that we can call with the message we want to display and the ID of the form where we want to show the message. So function show message, which will take two arguments, message and div ID. Variable message div is equals to document.get element by ID div ID of the form where we want to display the message. Message div.style.display to be block. Message div.innerHTML to be the actual message we want to display. We will set the opacity to be 1. We are going to have a set timeout and pass a function which will be executed after a specified delay, which in this case will be 5 seconds. During this execution, the opacity of an element will be set to 0. Now let's call the show message function and pass the message we want to display, along with the ID of the div where we want to display the message. Show message, account created successfully, and we are going to show it in sign up form. Doc, it is a function provided by Firestore. It is used to create a reference to a specific document in a Firestore database. Constant docref is equals to doc. Then we're going to pass a DB object, users collection, and user unique identifier. SetDoc function provided by Firestore, which requires two arguments, a reference to the document where the data will be set, and the data to be set in the document. In our scenario, we will set the user data object. If the operation completes successfully, we will be directed to index.html, allowing user to log in with the created account. Windows location.href is equals to index.html. If there is an issue while writing the document, we will capture the error console.error error writing document. Similarly, if there is an error while adding the account, we will handle it. We'll initialize constant error code with error code from error object. So we have constant error code is equals to error.code. Then if error code is equals authentication /email already in use, this implies that an account with similar email already exists. So in this case, we'll call the show message function and pass message email address already exists, which will be displayed in a sign up message div. Else, show message unable to create user and show it in sign up message. Let's proceed to test the sign up functionality to ensure it is working correctly. I will create an account. First name, I will enter Francis. Last name, let me use a tech. Email, let me use just francis@gmail.com. Then password, and then click on the sign up button. Well, account created successfully, message is displayed. Then we were successfully redirected to login form. Now let's check if the user was added to Firebase Authentication. Yes, we have a new user with an email address francis@gmail.com. Next up, let's check Firestore to see if any data was inserted. We have a user with the name Francis inserted. Next up, we'll work on the login functionality, allowing user to sign in using the account created. After successfully logging, we will display who is logged in. Our sign-in form contains a button with ID submit sign in, which is the button we will use for our sign-in form. So constant sign in is equals to document.getElement by ID submit sign in. I will add event listener to the button. So sign in.add event listener. On click event, I will prevent a default action from occurring. Then I'm going to initialize two constants, email and password, with the values from the input fields of the sign-in form. So you have two IDs, email and password. So constant email is equals to document.getElement by ID, email.value, and constant password is equals to document.getElement by ID, password.value. Constant authentication will hold the instance of Firebase Authentication service. Sign in with email and password. This function is called to authenticate a user using their email address and password. Authentication instance, email of user trying to sign in, and a password will be passed as argument. We will have a callback function if signing is successful. User credential parameter contains the information of signed in user. At this point, we will show the message logging is successful and show it in sign in message form. I will initialize a constant user with the user object from user credential. Then I will store the user ID of logged in user in the browser local storage. This will be useful for tracking the user authentication state. So local storage.setItem, then we will pass a key and value. So logged in user ID, then a value will be stored as a user ID. We will then direct the logged in user to homepage.html. So go ahead and create an empty homepage.html file. We will redirect the user to homepage.html. If there is an error while signing in, we will handle it appropriately. We'll initialize constant error code with the error code from error object. So constant error code is equals to error.code. If error code is equals to invalid credential, then we will call show message function and pass this message incorrect email or password and show it in div with id sign in message. Else account does not exist and show it in sign in message div. With that done, let's try to sign in with the account we created earlier, francis@gmail.com. Let me enter password. Login successful. We have been redirected to homepage.html. If I inspect this page, then go to more, then select application. Under local storage, we have a key and it is corresponding value. We'll find a key named logged in user ID with a value representing the user ID of logged in user. This will come in handy for the next step of displaying the logged in user, which happens to be the next part. It will be interesting, please stick around. Let's open homepage.html. Type exclamation mark to generate a basic HTML skeleton. I will modify the page title to homepage. We'll include a heading 1 element. Welcome to homepage. Type div times 3 to have 3 div. First div with text first name, second div with text last name, and third one as email. I will create a button with ID logout, text logout displayed on it. I will add a span with ID logged user first name for first name div, a span with ID logged user last name for last name div, and a span with ID logged user email for the email address div. Let's add embedded style, body padding 30 pixel, background linear gradient to right. It will transition smoothly from left to right. Color changing from hashtag E2E2E2 to hashtag C9D6FF. Then let's have heading 1, text align center button. Let's set text color background color hashtag C9D6FF. Padding 5 pixel, border radius as 5 pixel, font size 1 rem, and font weight border none. Button on hover, text decoration add a line, color blue. Let me select button, add div, and set margin left 15%, font size 20 pixel, and padding of 10 pixel. Then our div will have a font weight of 400 and a color of RGB 121111. Then let's have our span with a font weight of 600, font size 22 pixel, and a color black. I will go ahead and link a JavaScript file just below the closing tag of the style section. I will set the script type as module so as we can be able to import, and the source attribute to homepage.js. Proceed to create the homepage.js file. We'll copy the 3 imports from Firebase Auth.js and paste them here. Let's modify what we are importing. We won't require these 2 methods. Let me add a method for authentication on auth state changed and a sign out method. Also change set doc to get doc on Firestore import. Switch back to Firebase Auth.js to copy the Firebase configuration code and paste it here. Initialize the constant auth with Firebase authentication instance. Constant auth is equals to get auth. Initialize db with Firebase Firestore instance. So constant db is equals to get Firestore. On auth state changed, which will set up a listener that triggers whenever the authentication state changes for currently authenticated user. User parameter is a callback function that gets code whenever the authentication state changes. It receives the current user object as a parameter, but in our case we will use local storage. We retrieve the value associated with the key logged in user and assign it to a constant logged in user ID. Constant logged in user ID is equals to local storage.getItem logged in user ID. If logged user ID, this will check if logged user ID has a truth value, and then we are going to create a reference to a document within the user's collection using the ID of the currently logged in user. So constant doc ref is equals to doc, then db users collection, and then pass the ID. Then fetch the data of the referenced document, get doc, then we are going to pass a doc ref here. Doc snap parameter represents the document snapshot object containing the data of the fetched document. If doc snap exists, this will check if the document exists in the Firestore database. If the document exists, we will use the data method to extract its data and return an object representing the data stored in the database. Constant user data is equals to docsnap.data, then document.getElement by ID, logged user first name dot inner text is equals to user data object. Then we are going to take first name property, then document.getElement by ID, logged in user.inner text, user data.email property, and lastly logged user last name inner text is equals to user data.last name property. If docsnap does not exist, we will handle the error else console log no document found matching ID. If there are any issues with connecting to the document, we will handle that error as well. Console log error getting document. If the user ID is not set in the local storage, we will also display that information. Console.log user ID not found in local storage. So time to put the login to test. Can we access the logged in user information? Well, yes, login passed the test. Now we work on a logout button. So constant logout button is equals to document.getElement by ID logout. Logout button.add event listener on click. Then local storage.remove item logged in user ID. This will remove the item with the key logged in user ID from the browser local storage. Sign out auth. Firebase signs out the currently authenticated user associated with the provided authentication instance. Then if our sign out operation completes, we will redirect the user to index.html. Windows.location.href is equals to index.html. If sign out operation fails, we will show the error in console. Console.error, error in signing out, error. Now it is time to test all the features if they work as expected. We will create an account. First name Josephat, last name Jos, and an email of josephat@gmail.com. Then our password, sign up successful. I will try to log in with the account we have just created. So email josephat@gmail.com. Then our password, sign in successful. We have all the details of logged in user showing. Now on to testing the logout button, and logout is successful. And if we were to go ahead and check our Firebase to see if we have a new user inserted, well, it shows we have a user with an email Josephat added to our authentication. You can go ahead and check our Firestore. There they are. We have a first name Josephat neatly added to our Firestore database. Well, everything is working just as planned. That does it. Thanks for sticking around. As bonus, leave a comment below with what you would like to learn next, and I might just create a video on it. And of course, smash that like button and subscribe for more.